In my last video, I used this vintage toy keyboard, the Yamaha PSS-140, and I mentioned that there was something particularly interesting about it. So in today's video, I'm going to explain a bit more about the keyboard and play a folk song on it. The PSS-140 is from 1988 and uses a variant of one of the most iconic synthesizer chips of the late 80s and 1990s, the YM3812. This was one of a line of FM synthesis chips produced by Yamaha and was particularly notable for its use in some of the first commercially successful computer sound cards, notably the Adlib card from 1987 and the incredibly popular Creative Sound Blaster card, introduced as a direct competitor 2 years later. Pretty much all video games from then until the end of the DOS era supported the Adlib and Sound Blaster cards, and even when more sophisticated sound cards had been developed, the ability to emulate the sound of a YM3812 was a standard feature even into the early part of this century. The chip can play up to 9 notes at the same time, and each note can be a different sound. It uses FM synthesis, that is, frequency modulation, combining 2 different waveforms together to create a more complex sound than would be possible with a single waveform. More sophisticated forms of FM synthesis that combine 4 or 6 or even more waveforms in each sound were also available, but these tended to be used on professional keyboards such as the Yamaha DX7. The PSS-140 actually uses a cost-reduced variant of the YM3812. If we look inside the keyboard, we can see the synth chip here on the main circuit board, and it's labelled as the YM2420, which is itself a minor variant of the YM2413. The main difference is that where the YM3812 allows a different custom sound to be used for every note, the cheaper versions have a set of built-in sounds and only allow one additional custom sound to be used at any one time. For a keyboard, that's not a problem, as you generally want to have the whole keyboard playing the same sound. There are a few other changes between the different versions of the chip, but they're mostly quite technical and so I won't go into them in any more detail here. The PSS-140 has 100 melody sounds. If you're used to 90s keyboards or anything more recent, that probably sounds fairly standard, but in 1988 that was a lot of choice. The sounds are all arranged alphabetically, so the first one you get when turning the keyboard on is also the first one in the list, which is accordion 1. This sort of FM synthesis doesn't tend to produce particularly realistic sounds, but it can produce a wide variety of sounds that are pleasant in their own way, for example the flute. There's a particular type of brassy sound that can be made with FM synthesis, which again doesn't sound much like the real thing, but was a popular sound in 80s music in its own right. Almost every synthesizer has a vibraphone sound, probably because it's quite simple to produce in a way that sounds good. Bowed strings tend to sound quite nice in FM synthesis, but plucked strings are usually less successful, and this keyboard is no exception. This is apparently an ukulele. The piano is notorious for being particularly difficult to reproduce on a synthesizer, and it's not really until keyboards with digital samples came along that it was possible to get a good piano sound. This is the PSS-140's version. Some of the organ sounds are quite nice. Perhaps the most interesting one is called Small Church, and sounds like a strange mixture of a pipe organ and a Hammond organ. If you notice that the lowest note of that chord got cut off halfway through, even though I'd previously said that the synth chip can play 9 notes at a time, you're not wrong. That's because it also has a percussion mode, which trades 3 of the melody channels for 5 built-in drum sounds. On this keyboard, that mode is always enabled, and you can play the drum sounds using these pads. The built-in rhythms use these simple sounds fairly effectively, and there's the typical auto-accompaniment system you'd expect from an amateur keyboard of this era. I'll demonstrate this by playing a version of the folk song Danny Boy, using one of the melody sounds and the auto-accompaniment feature. One of the limitations of this feature is that playing a new chord restarts the drum beat from the beginning of the bar, so I've had to make some compromises in the choice of chords so that they never have to change in the middle of a bar. Now let's try another version of the same song without using the auto-accompaniment. I'm going to play an adaptation of this arrangement taken from the Petrie collection of the Ancient Music of Ireland, published in 1855. This predates the composition of the lyrics of Danny Boy by nearly half a century, but the melody is much older as an instrumental. The book uses an unusual method of indicating tempo by showing the length of a pendulum that would oscillate at the correct speed. In this case, crotchet equals 24 inches means about 76 beats per minute. That's unusually fast for this tune, so I'm playing it at a more typical speed of just over 60 beats per minute. That's all I have for this video. I hope you found the PSS-140 as interesting as I did, and do make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. Thanks for watching.